What happens when men don't have deep connections with other men? What's the cost to our vitality, fulfillment, when we lone wolf it through life? And could being part of an intentional brotherhood serve your life? On this episode, my guest, Tate, Aaron, and I mine these questions and more for useful insights to make a meaningful difference in your life. Tate is my lifelong childhood best friend. And in this episode, we're diving into the fourth pillar of a thriving man, brotherhood. In a recent episode, I introduced my 5 pillars of a thriving man: purpose, intimacy, family, brotherhood, spirituality. And who better to invite on to talk about the pillar of brotherhood than the man who's been my soul brother since we were 10 years old, 36 years ago? Now, what does this word brother mean? On the first day of a men's retreat in Norway that I was invited to help support a few years ago, I heard a man say, "I don't know why we use this word brother with each other. You guys aren't my brothers. I don't know you. I don't get it." And I got it. I understood him. Made sense. Yeah, why do we use that word? But at the end of that incredible week, after 6 days of us men being respectfully challenged by each other, getting vulnerable, and at times being very uncomfortably real with each other, and laughing a lot together too, and sometimes screaming and crying with each other, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I now know what brother means. It means you know how I feel. You know how I feel." Damn. His words have never left me. One of the great tragedies of our modern world is that we men, and many women too, we're essentially taught not to feel, that feelings don't matter, that productivity, accomplishment, winning should be our primary concerns. Like many men, perhaps like you, I've long struggled with feeling disconnected from my emotions and from my body, and thus disconnected even from my intimate partners and from my own life. At times, I've felt unbearably lonely, even when surrounded by people and my own external success. It's only been a few years now that I've really awakened to the importance of brotherhood, by which I mean real, vulnerable, courageous companionship with other men in which we celebrate each other's triumphs, witness and comfort each other in our sorrows, and challenge each other, always with respect, when we see each other playing small in ways that don't serve. Now, my guest today, Tate, is the one man, I should say, the one man with whom I've been profoundly fortunate to share a lifetime of brotherhood. He's one of the most thoughtful, smart, and alive people I've ever known. And I'm so honored and excited to invite you into our beautiful friendship today to hear the story of our brotherhood, including some of the challenges we've faced along the way and some of the ways we've let each other down or other men down and the costs of it. Tate, I'm so delighted to share, is actually my right hand man for Elevate 2021, the year long coaching adventure for men committed to thriving in every domain of life, which begins imminently. If you're interested in being part of an incredible brotherhood going through all of 2021 together, sharing in our challenges, challenging each other to show up, speak up, and create new experiences of success, new breakthroughs in our lives in ways that we often can't even imagine are possible until we're held in a powerful container of brotherhood with other men. Well, if any of that speaks to you, then definitely apply now for Elevate 2021. Go to bryanreeves.com/elevate. It's Bryan with a Y, reeves.com/elevate. We only have 3 spots left. If you are ready to step deeper into your full free expression as a man and fully give your greatest gifts to the world, to your loved ones, and to live the vow you know your soul is waiting for you to make, then this is for you. Go to bryanreeves.com/elevate and apply ASAP. Now let's get back to this momentous encounter with my dear friend Tate Aaron. This is a very special episode, So please stay tuned all the way through to Tate's 5 key takeaways at the end of this episode of Men This Way. All right, let's dive. Tate, Price, Arendt, welcome to Men This Way. This is
Thank
where
you,
you
brother. It's
say
great to
this.
be here. Bryan Reeves.
I know this is your first podcast ever. That's where you say, you said it. You did. Good job, man. You're doing great. Tate, you're rocking it so far.
Story of our life is you positively encouraging me along.
How you feeling, man? How you feeling?
Oh man, I am. I don't know. I'm humbled, man. This is the conversation that you and I have, in many ways, been building for 30 years to have a conversation like this in this kind of way, and just feeling humbled, feeling excited, feeling nervous,
Uh-huh.
and feeling really hopeful, brother.
Well, I had thought that this would be your second podcast interview because I'd connected you with that other man I don't know, 6 months ago or so, and maybe longer. And you just shared with me, it was before that you actually didn't, that never happened. And so, dude, here we are. You're
Here we are,
first.
breaking
I'm,
me in.
I'm excited, man. I'm honored.
Me too. Yeah, me
Um,
too.
You and I have had a lot of firsts together over the 36 years now of our friendship.
Yeah.
Um,
Holy cow.
I know uh, we did. This is not an off limits topic. We both got our first colonic together.
Let's just jump right in, brother. Let's just jump right in.
What are we?
That's
What are we
hilarious.
here for? Right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you were the first guy to throw up on my parents' lawn and stain their grass for probably a good summer.
That's because you were the first guy that got me drunk at 15. I'm guessing. I think I was 14, 15. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That's true.
Man, 36 years.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
Uh, I want to get into our origin story a little bit, but first, Tate, I want to uh, just to help our listeners get to know who you are a little bit more. I ask a few. Well, I usually ask a question. Um, well, I'm just going to ask this question. Tell us something about yourself. Anything, man. Anything you want that you want us to know about you, but that you're also a little bit embarrassed or uncomfortable to share. And I realize I just may have outed you with the colonic thing,
That
but
qualifies right there,
that
right?
does qualify. But I'm going to tell us something else, man.
What is there for you to know, man? I think something that's relevant that actually happened this week is and I obviously don't show up to brand new conversations throwing this kind of stuff out there, but I think it's relevant, which is that on Wednesday of this past week, I celebrated 18 years of sobriety of alcohol. I haven't drank in about 18 years. And, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation if that hadn't happened 18 years ago. And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of this guy who believes that the tragedies of our lives are actually the most important things to help set us on the trajectories that we were designed for. I'm somebody who probably experienced a little bit more trauma, at least in my perspective, early on in my life. I started to then later inflict some traumas on myself and created so many dark nights of the soul. But the reason why I'm able to have a conversation like this with you and have amazing people in my life, my wife, my two kids, the life that I get to live right now is because it's born out of the tragedies of my past.
Yeah. Beautifully said, man. And I want to acknowledge too that 18 years sober, one of the things that I think this is one of the we've been friends 36 years, and I think you were in the throes of this addictive time in your life when we weren't really that connected. We
True.
weren't communicating a lot. um, and I had no idea that
Mm,
you were having that kind of experience to that depth and degree that you were having it. So, I think back to those times. I'm so glad that that life is, and we have chosen, and not that we've ever
yeah.
lost contact, but in these last few years, especially, man, we've really come home to each other. But, and we'll get into that because I think that especially spanning 36 years, there are going to be ebbs and flows, and it's a seasons
Yeah.
of an experience. Um, but thank you, man. Thank you for sharing that, and beautifully said. And let's talk a little bit now about our origin story, like
Mm,
how we met. Now, I want to hand this to you because I was realizing as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about our origin story, and I realized like when we tell this story, I think I usually started off with something like, you know, Tate was like this angry kid in the neighborhood that was just a bully. Like I didn't like him. I did not like him. I tried to stay. I was scared of him. It usually starts off that way, and I was realizing, geez, that's quite a narrative. I'm not sure that I've ever heard your side of that. Of all these fucking years, man, of telling that story, I'm curious. How did we meet in your eyes?
that's a great question, man. I uh, I think I've always just let you tell that story because there's a lot of truth to that story, and
Uh-huh.
notice how you did start the story with the story anyway.
It's what I do,
um,
man. It's how
but
I.
yeah. But I was a guy that had I'm a lot, right? Like I am an all or nothing kind of guy,
Mm,
and so I can be intense in the. I think that you know, I don't think I ever actually physically harmed you, but I think my presence is a lot and is overwhelming. And I think I think growing up the way that I did and where we grew up, I just was trying to ping around to find people that I could connect with. And fortunately, we were able to get past the I don't know, the story that you had about me, and maybe even the story that I had you about you
yeah.
to explore what friendship really was like.
Yeah. And of course, coming back to my version of the story, you made me get over it. You gave me no choice. I had to be your friend. I mean, one of my early memories is, and you did, I don't remember you ever actually hurting me physically, but I was very intimidated by you. My father was gone.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a strong male figure in my life up until that age. And that's actually when my stepfather came along, 10, because we moved into that neighborhood where he
Yep.
lived, there before where you lived. And I love my stepfather, but he was not a safe presence for me
Yeah.
as well. So I was so, man, I was such a, I described myself back then as like a weak, scared kid with no dad to kind of show me how to be a man at 10 years old.
Mm.
And here you come along and you're this strong, I mean, you're the biggest kid in the neighborhood at our age. You're strong, you're intense, you are I was terrified of you, man. Um because you could, I mean, it's a little Lord of the Flies. You could have hurt me way more than I could have hurt you, just physically. And yet, like we needed each other.
Yeah. No doubt.
I felt like we
Yeah.
really needed each other.
I think I think one of the stories that we share is that neither of us had our fathers around in the way that we,
Mm,
in retrospect, needed them most.
yeah.
And I'm not sure that I could have described at the time that what I needed from my father. My father was an incredible provider. I've learned a lot from the struggling relationship that we've had over the years. We did not get along at all when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We had a lot of tension, a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, a lot of yelling, a lot of intensity. And the relationship I have with my dad now is drastically different. But neither of us had our fathers around in the ways that we longed for and
Yeah,
didn't know that we longed for. And
totally.
so we found this brotherhood of, I guess the way I describe it is I helped you get stronger,
Yeah.
and you helped me really open up my eyes to see what was possible for me in my life.
Mm,
Like that's a role that you stepped into
mm,
and were able to speak to me in a way that I could really hear that. I mean,
mm.
I remember one of our very first conversations when I made myself sleep over at your house and
Yep.
made you sleep on the floor while I slept in your bed.
Yeah.
Um,
One of my
that
favorite stories,
that I
by the way.
remember. I'm sure. Well, I remember us being in your room and looking out your window and looking up at the stars, and you kind of going on about, like, you think about how many stars there are in the universe, and you think about how many
Mm,
planets must be around. It just this idea of how big and vast the world is that I had never thought in that way before.
mm,
And so that gift that you've always from that moment on given me this perspective about looking at the world through this gigantic lens of opportunity
mm.
is something that I'll forever be grateful for. Like that's a role that I needed to have be played in my life, and you stepped in and did that for me.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. Thank you. Yeah, and I over the years as I've understood what the gifts of our relationship has been, and even I look at Sylvie, my partner, the woman I chose 5 years ago and am still with today, like you described yourself earlier as a lot. Sylvie is a lot. Like you and Sylvie, man, she's my female Tate. In so many ways, it's hysterical how alike the two of you are. And I think there's probably truth in, I feel a lot similar to Elsa, your wife,
Yeah,
always bringing that perspective. I mean, your wife's amazing in what she's doing with Ayurveda medicine, for example, now,
yeah,
and the health and all that stuff. And
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
it's like, I was always fascinated by your intensity, your capacity to feel everything, man.
Mhm.
As a boy, shut down in my emotions, not really, there's all kinds of layers to why, but just really disconnected from my body and not feeling safe to feel stuff. And
Mhm.
so living in my head a lot. And here you are, this fucking live wire,
Mhm.
feeling everything, ready to pummel anything that threatens you or me out of existence. I
Yeah,
needed that, man. I needed that in my own, like, I was like, I don't even know what the threats are around me because I can't feel so much,
yeah.
you
and
know?
I was on hyper alert vigilance for
Right.
what might be able to harm us, and wanted
Everything's
to
a
make
potential. Yeah.
everything was, yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm so, just in the years and all these years, man, um, here we are 36 years later, man.
Yeah,
And again, we've been through seasons where we might only talk once a year or so.
yeah,
Um, but man, and it was what, 3 years ago, about three and a
yeah,
half years ago, that we went up to that cabin in the mountains north of LA.
yeah,
Both of us just, reflecting on. I mean, for me, I'll let you speak for you. For me, I was just so aware of how fucking lonely I was,
yeah,
even with, everything I thought I'd ever wanted: woman, dog, home, work I love, yet missing male companionship,
yeah,
and I didn't even know it.
yeah.
What was that time for you like? Like when we went up to that cabin, like what was going on for you?
Yeah, so that would have been, what year would that have been? 2017, I guess.
Yeah, ish.
Something like that. So, it was actually such a pivotal time for me. My wife and I, had just gone through this struggle. Both of us thought about whether or not we should separate in around 2016, and we ended up having one of the most magical experiences of our lives in St. John, and really reconnected and rekindled our love and our partnership, and that set us on this path that our marriage is better than we either one of us could have ever dreamed. But in the midst of having our marriage start to repair and really grow, there was this longing and this need. I ended up having the wife and the marriage that I wanted and I longed for, and two amazing kids and a career that's very successful.
Yeah.
But to still feel like you have success without the kind of significance that you want to have is almost a tragedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the common threads that I see and have with guys that I have conversations with is, I think a lot of times we end up getting exactly what we wanted as a kid, and then to find ourselves still unfulfilled is like
Yeah.
this. It's alarming, and I think as
Yeah.
guys we end up distracting ourselves and numbing out in ways that we feel like we have to continue surviving the life that we've longed for, is just a crazy paradox to be in. And so when we found ourselves up in this mountain, really having this longing for brotherhood, a real brotherhood, is something that's been this shift that's happened for us over the last 3 years, that to really step into that and helping to create brotherhoods and be able to really live inside of what's possible inside of one, has been a spark that we both needed at a time that, we're now in our mid 40s, and we've lived half our life. How do we really want to live the last half of our life to make sure we get to do what we were designed to do?
Dude, there's so much, so much in what you're saying. That piece of, as we've been very fortunate to essentially get everything we thought we ever wanted.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, um, even when that starts to happen for us, okay, I got the woman, you know what? I'm not happy with her. Let me get a different woman.
Right. Yeah.
Or I got the job and the money. It's still, maybe I don't have enough money. Right. We've talked about that story. Remember that yacht that my
Totally.
parents' business partner had down in Fort Lauderdale. He had a 110-foot yacht, all in beautiful big home on the Fort Lauderdale coastal waterways, and all he could talk about was the 140-foot yacht that he was having built. Because
That's right.
110 wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what a teaching story to have in my
Totally.
mid 20s. And I think that was what was really revolutionary for me, even in these past 5 years, and our the weekend that you and I spent about 3.5 years ago or so, where this podcast was ultimately born. This men's
Yeah.
work, all of this was
Yeah.
ultimately born that weekend.
Yeah.
I had no idea that this was missing from my life. I had, being in the military,
Yeah.
knowing men throughout my life. It's like,
Yep.
okay, I can be friends with guys, but I'm not really satisfied I'm not nourished by these relationships.
Yeah.
You and I both were in fraternities. I
Right.
love my fraternity brothers,
Yeah. Me too.
but when we'd hang out, we're basically just drinking alcohol, talking about ass, uh, sports, politics, work, that's it. We
Yeah.
weren't having real conversations. And I love that. Again, I'm not dissing any of that, but I had no idea how hungry I was for consistent male brotherhood companionship. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that weekend that you and I spent, man, big ass fireplace. Remember that epic fireplace?
Mm.
Oh God,
Yeah.
man, it was like the perfect mountain location for us. And again, this is the example, the gift of brotherhood. For me, one of the many is I wouldn't be doing this work today if it weren't for that weekend with you.
Yeah.
These 5 pillars of a thriving man, they wouldn't have come through if you and I hadn't been in conversation that whole
Yeah.
weekend, talking about our experiences, exploring our longings, all of that. None of this would have come through. I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. It's one of the things I think about a lot with the conversations that we have over our lifetime is the how important the evolution of things are. Like when I was a kid, I was just longing for a friend. I didn't. Well, what's a brother? Like I didn't have one. I had a sister, an amazing sister, but a sister. So I didn't know what a relationship with a brother was. I was just longing for a friend. And I think the first time that I ever, and then I elementary school, middle school, high school, I was on teams. I played baseball. I was on teams, right? But we were playing sports, and it was one level of things. And then I got to college, and it was the first time that I really heard the idea of brotherhood. And I joined a fraternity, and it was great on one end, and yet it was completely unfulfilling as it relates to really living out some of the ideals of what you hear about a brotherhood.
Yeah.
You can't haze and call somebody a brother at the same time. I mean, it's just the incongruence of some of those things. And then what's happened is I have extraordinary men that are in my life, friends that are in my life, brothers that are in my life, some from my fraternity, right? But and some through other phases of my life. But the grouping of men that are really up to something, that are collectively up to something, and that collectively are being supported by other extraordinary men, like that's a different kind of life experience. That I think I can't say that I've ever had that before. That we're very clear, like we're going to spend the next, in this case, year of our life doing something that can really set all of us up for the greatest successes that we've ever had, and to do so in a way that we're challenging and supporting one another to get that. Like that's unrecognizable. I think a lot of times there's some guys that are willing to go deep and other guys that aren't. There's some people that have never done any kind of work, and other people that are so deep into it you can connect on almost every level. I think finding a group of men that are really on the same page, that are united about themselves and for one another, that's epic. Like
Yeah.
that's something to really build.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I've been doing men's groups for a number of years now, and participating as a co-equal participant and also facilitating them. And in the introduction to our episode, Tate, I'm going to talk about when I record it after this, even though everyone listening will have heard it before this moment, but
Right.
about this idea of brother. What does brother mean?
Yeah.
Um, the idea that how I feel. You know how I feel. A definition that was gifted to me by a man at the retreat that I helped to co-facilitate back a couple of years ago in Norway. This man, he came in with this idea of brother. He didn't understand why we use that word all the time. And
Mm.
at the end of the retreat, he said, I got it. I understand. It means you know how I feel.
Mm.
And I think about that, the
Yeah.
fraternity example, hazing, the thing about, uh, in a way, it's so irresponsibly done, but I also understand that we're trying to push each other into these intense feeling experiences so that we can be on the same page.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, he knows how I feel. He went through what I went through, so he knows how I feel. Now we're
Yeah.
brothers. And I think
Yeah.
going through a year, what we're launching into this Elevate 2021 experience, we're going to be able to like you and I have been doing this for 36 years, man. All the ups and downs, the ways that we've had our squabbles, we've had our moments,
Yeah.
but and we've also seen each other at bottom, where we've really fucking hit bottom and been in the shit.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for this year because, like to your point, man, men, we don't really get to connect at that level certainly not for a sustained period of time. There's a lot of, you could do a weekend retreat with some guys and then never see them again. And it's great. And
Right.
I've had that experience. And then I'm fucking
Yep.
lonely, right? All over again.
Yeah.
What does brotherhood mean to you?
Man, that's a great question because and I my best guess is by the end of this year I'm going to have even a
Mm,
different perspective about it.
mm,
But it really is about it, being amongst a group of men that are there to both challenge and support one another. Because I'll start there. So challenge. I think a lot of times, men need challenge. We want to be on an adventure. We are willing to go into battle. We are willing to be challenged, right?
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but it's almost like we want to do that at the nth degree. But many times, I think us as men don't feel supported, right? And so to be challenged and supported is the balancing act of a real brotherhood. To be supported but not challenged is boring, and no guy wants that. No guy wants to live a life in which there's not some mountain for them to
Yeah,
climb together. And
totally.
so being in a brotherhood that has both challenge and support are critical for us to really show up the way that we need to. And that's what the purpose of a brotherhood is, in my opinion, is to really do two things while getting challenged and supported. And the first is to actually show up, right? To show up and to keep showing up. Because I know a lot about my story and a lot about the stories of the men that I know too, is that what we do is we show up and then we stop showing up. We show up at work and then we stop showing up. We show up in our relationships and then we stop showing up. We show up for our health and we stop showing up for our health. We show up for, our career. We live this like up and down, up and down, up and down thing. It's because we are ready for the challenge, but then we don't have the support. And then when we fall, we don't have the challenge to get back. It's like this ebb and flow. So challenge and support so that we show up. And then the second thing is so that we then speak up. Because I think a guy who shows up but doesn't speak up will eventually stop showing up. If we show up in our relationship but we don't speak up, we're not going to get our needs met. If we show up in our career but don't speak up, we're not going to live into having a career of purpose. Like, to be in a brotherhood to me is to be challenged and supported, to make sure that I'm showing up and speaking up in my life so that I can have the life that I want to live and not just survive it.
Yeah, that's profound, man. I'm reminded even right now of something that happened a few months ago, back in September, I think, for me, when I attended a weekend with one of the men's groups that I'm in right now, one of my co-equal men's groups. When I say co-equal, I just mean none of us are facilitating it. We're all in it together.
Yeah.
We did a retreat uh, at a big house with a outdoor fire, and it was an epic weekend. And one night around the fire, all these men started sharing their stories of how they have stood up to their fathers in different ways.
Mm.
And as I'm listening to their stories, and some of these men, I mean, they had brutal fathers, you know, fathers doing illegal shit, fathers abusing them, beating them, and their mothers, all these kinds of things. And I'm hearing their stories of them standing up to their fathers, and I'm reflecting on my own experience, and I'm realizing, wow, I've never actually stood up to my father in that way. I've
Mm.
yelled at him,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
rebelled as the angry kid, but I've never, man to man, looked him in the eye and said, "You stop it." Like, or to just confront him with the ways that he has been showing up that don't serve our family. I've never done that. I'd
Yeah.
never fucking done that, man. I'm 46. I mean, this was literally back in September. Within 24 hours of coming home, I
Mm.
had that conversation with my dad.
Mm.
It
It
was,
gave me chills.
it
Yeah.
was, and I couldn't even see it.
Right. Right.
And I've had, my women in the past have had issues with my dad, things like I should have stood up for, things that I didn't know what to do. They
Yeah.
can't tell me, my woman can't tell me, you need to stand up
Right.
to your father. Fuck off. Don't tell me what to do. But through the story of being witnessed by, and in conversation with these other men and seeing their stories, wow, man, it was life changing for me.
Well, I think we live in a culture in many ways, and I have some friends that have extraordinary and have always had extraordinary relationships with their fathers, but that's rare. I mean, most of the guys who I talked to had dads that were providers and were there and showed up, but but again, didn't necessarily show up in the ways that they longed for, but didn't know that they longed for. And so what happens is our moms raise us on what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And then we get girlfriends that want us to be men in a particular way that they think a man should be. But it's only when another brother tells another brother about what's possible, shows them what's possible and what it really means to be a man, that's when things really start to click. That's when messages get to be received in a way that they don't otherwise get to be received. We need men to be showing the way. Men this way was born out of this idea.
That's
Like
right.
like I need barriers to tell me like where am I going to fall off a cliff, right? And you're the map maker, right? You're the one
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
designs the map so that men can find their way through these challenges. And so that's what I think is just incredible, is that creating containers. That's one of the things that I've really gotten over the last 3 years since we had that retreat, which is creating containers. You and I, from that point forward, really started setting up kind of weekly calls. We connected every
Yeah.
Monday, 6:30 to 7:30 Eastern
Yeah.
Standard Time,
Yeah.
your time out on the West Coast, and having a container where we could connect once a week, 50 times a year.
Yeah.
Like how many times? And now I've created that with my buddy Arnie on Tuesdays, and my buddies John and Seth on Wednesdays, and another guy John on Mondays for lunch. It's like I need containers to help me make sure that I'm having the interactions with the men that I need in my life, because otherwise I will go months without talking to guys who I would consider brothers,
Yeah.
right? So those containers end up being really critical along the way, I think.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Our decision to have that anchor every week on Mondays as a call where we check in, man. That's it. We're scheduled to talk for an hour. Occasionally we don't, for whatever reason, for specific reasons. Let's just say whatever reason. There are very clear reasons why, but that's it. That's our appointment. Man, it's essential. It's as essential as any other work task or relationship with my wife task, or self-care. It's self-care. Really grateful we decided to do that. I'm curious, what are one or two of the greatest gifts that our brotherhood, and I'm going to share mine as well, but what are for you, what are some of the greatest gifts over the years?
I started this conversation by talking about how you've always been a guy who helped open my eyes to what was possible. That's definitely at the top of the list. But the other thing is, Bryan, you've always been a stand. I mean, we've talked about this where there's gaps and we make mistakes, but 99% of the time you have been a stand for me about making sure that I do what I was built to do,
Mm,
right? Which is to make an impact and to
mm,
live a life of purpose,
mhm,
and to have somebody that has been in my corner since
mm,
the age of 10 or 11 years
mm,
old, telling me that I'm here to do something, and
mm,
encouraging me and challenging me
mm,
and supporting me to step into my purpose has been definitely at the top of the list
mm,
about what you have brought to me, what you the way that you've been a rock for me
mm.
since I was 10 years old.
Yeah, it feels good to hear, man.
Mm.
Yeah, that feels really good to hear. You've there's two things that come up for me in this question just immediately. And the one is, dude, you always feel like home.
Mm,
I've lived a very unmoored, untethered life. I've adventured, I've lived so many damn places, since I left home at basically barely 17.
yeah.
I haven't hardly been in any one city or location for more than 4 years since I was fucking, but even younger, moving around, even in our little village, moving around so much. You are besides going to mom's home, anytime I'm hanging out with you, man, I feel like I'm at
Mm,
home. That
yeah.
for me is invaluable. It's so just your energy, your presence, because again, you know how I feel. You know where I come from. We've been through so much together over the years. We've been in conversation, in deep, real conversation for so long that, yeah, dude, you feel like home. And this is where we
Mm.
cue in the weepy song into the podcast. But here's the other thing. Tate, you're brilliant, man. An incredibly insightful man, and I have a brain that is endlessly curious, and I can, uh, your capacity to ask amazing questions, insight provoking questions, your ability. I think sometimes I can kind of also run off. In the past, I think I'm a little more. I think in my 40s, I'm a little less apt to do this. Still can do it, but a little less apt, which is I can run off into my sort of intellectual righteousness. And through the years, you've always had a great way of calling me out on that and saying, "Hold on there, Tiger. Let's think about this. Where are you going? I think I'm gonna call bullshit." And that's really important. That's so helpful. You haven't just been there agreeing with every goddamn idea I come up with and every because I can get on my high horse, man, and then all of a sudden think I've got some shit figured out and I'm better than others is kind of the tone that might come with or and so I've really valued that about you, your ability to kind of poke at my some of those moments and say, dude, come back down to ground to the earth for a second. Let's look
Yeah.
at this. Thank you
Thank
uh,
you, brother.
for that. um let's talk about because I think this is really important, especially in light of what's happening in our country right now, where we see in many ways men allowing other men to get away with their worst.
Mm.
What are some, can you describe a time in retrospect when you felt like you yourself failed to honor the sacred needs of brotherhood, either with me or with someone else?
Man, it's powerful that you're asking this question, especially at this time. So, at the beginning of December, I lost one of my best friends. Um, he, I mean, to say that this guy was larger than life is that
Yeah.
word, that phrase gets thrown around a lot. But my buddy Jeff, he was larger than life, and he's a
Look,
guy who,
look, I met him. I know. I mean, you're a lot. He's a lot. He's huge.
yeah,
His energy he's hilarious. He was
yeah,
amazing. I know.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
So extraordinary guy. It was in my fraternity. We were roommates together after college. We moved to Charlotte together. He started a pub crawl in Charlotte that ended up having over 20,000 people come to it. Started with 76 or something like that. He and his buddy Rich built this pub crawl, and at the very beginning of December, he was riding his Peloton and died at the age of 46. I think 45,
Mhm.
46. And it devastated me and devastated a whole community of people. And And I immediately thought, so he had a condition called AFib, and he was diagnosed with it. Maybe it was 7 years ago or so. And recently, um, over the last couple of years, he started vaping. And one of the biggest regrets that I had after he died was this idea, like, he's a grown ass man. He was he was going to do whatever he was going to do.
Right.
But I'm very clear that I failed him
Hmm.
as a friend. I saw him doing something that literally wasn't serving him. And that I had lunch with him six months ago or so, and he was saying that he had to adjust his medicine, and because he had another AFib kind of event, and that he was thinking about whether or not he should have this surgery called an ablation, and he ultimately decided against that. He said, "But I could drop dead at any moment."
Hmm.
And I didn't take that opportunity to say, hey, listen, I want you here, and
Mm-hmm.
you can do what you're going to do as a guy, but I wouldn't be being a friend to you if I didn't say, man, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared because I see you smoking and I don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
And what that prompted in me is, after I had that realization of the way that I failed him, I had lunch with two really good buddies the next day, John and Warden, and I was able to express that, because I didn't want I wanted to chase the wisdom of that moment where I had failed a brother,
Mm.
so that I wouldn't fail others.
Mm-hmm. It's a challenging thing, man, because I hear you, man. I feel you deeply. It's a challenging thing because as men, we're gonna do what we're gonna do. We are responsible for our own actions. And though I think because we often don't challenge each other in these ways because we don't have containers for it. We don't generally have
That's right.
containers, men's groups where we meet with the intention of putting it all on the table and witnessing each other in what's really going on. We don't create those containers. We're just hanging out, at the bar, at the restaurant, in our living room. We're just hanging out. And I think of it is a real challenge to, I mean, I can think of times where in our relationship where, you know, I mean, there's one time, again, we'll keep it general. We don't want to go into, it doesn't serve to go into the specifics of it, but where, you know, I I saw you doing something and I didn't know what to do with it.
Mm,
I didn't know what to do with it.
yeah.
And so I mostly just kept my mouth shut because I didn't know what to
Yeah.
do with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know now what I would do with it, but it would still be up to you to ultimately make your own choices. And I think that's kind of the razor's edge that we walk.
Yeah. And
Because
that,
if we, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, and that goes to this idea of what that definition of brotherhood, which is showing up and speaking up. Like I was showing up, but I wasn't speaking up to Bennett, and
Yeah.
you were showing up for me, but you
Yeah.
didn't speak up for me. And
Yeah.
the reality is, I think as guys, sometimes we're sharing things that we know, we're probably not doing what we're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
but we're sharing it
Yeah.
and hoping,
Yeah.
with a double-edged
Right.
coin, that
Right.
says, I don't want you to say something, but I do.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, I want you to just let me keep doing this stuff, but
But I
please
also,
say something, because I want to change the trajectory. I wouldn't be saying this and trying to bring you into this if I didn't really need somebody to
absolutely.
call me to a higher purpose. Like, there's these opportunities, and I don't know always I overdo it. I would go too hard at it
Mm,
sometimes, and
mm.
then I go to this place of where I don't do it at all. And it's like, to your point, it's like trying to find the edge and really speaking into what's possible for people, and knowing that you're there for them regardless. You're challenging and supporting them, but
Well,
but not to leave stuff out in the space that needs to be addressed.
I realize one of the costs of us not speaking up to each other is then the burden falls on our families, on
Mm,
our intimate partners. The
mhm.
burden falls on them
Yeah,
to, the consequences ultimately fall on them as we just sort of play out whatever unwise, unskillful thing we're
yep,
continuing to
yep,
act out. Um, yeah, boy, man, the ripple effect of the cost of us not creating containers where we can have these conversations with each other is it's unfathomable, the
yeah,
amount of damage and suffering. So I think, again, I don't want to over exaggerate either, but the point is it fucking matters.
yeah.
It matters. And
Yeah,
I
one of the articles that I read many years ago, it was called "Why Men Don't Have Friends and Why Women Should Care,"
Yeah,
and it talked a lot about how men oftentimes develop great friendships in high school and in college, but thereafter it's a much more challenging to develop those lifelong friendships where you're expressing your hopes and your dreams and your fears and your concerns and your worries, and if men don't have other men, to your point, it ends up the 100% of the burden goes to the woman typically, or the family that guy is in, that can't hold the space that's necessary and only can be held by another guy
yeah,
stepping into that space with them.
yeah. So great note to, or great moment to segue into Elevate 2021. Let's talk about that because
Yeah.
you're
All right.
helping me create and execute this incredible experience for men. Um, how's this been feeling for you, man? Stepping into this.
Oh man, it's been when you were talking about feeling like home
Yeah.
about with me, this is feeling like this is home. This is going to be a home for 2021
Uh,
that's going to be unlike any experience that I've had in my life. To really
yeah.
be surrounded by 12 men that are all across the world, literally, um,
Yeah.
come together to support one another, to take on what matters most. I feel enlivened. I feel excited. I feel nervous. I feel hopeful. I feel um, I feel full. That's the way I feel.
And you've been doing I mean, we've got now at the time of this recording, 7 men have leaped in,
Yeah.
and we've only got 3 spots left. And you've done, what's really surprised me. We talked about this before. I figured we'd need about 50 applications. 50 men to actually apply. My assistant Gina said, no, 100
Yeah.
for 10 men to ultimately make this choice. And dude, we've only done like what, 20?
25 or so applications. Yeah. 24.
And you've talked to most of those men. What have you really enjoyed about these calls with these guys?
Man, it has been um, it's been incredible to see men that are doing work in the world that matters, that have been working on themselves and that are working in their families and working in their communities to really be living life, to be challenging themselves to live their life in a way that is unimaginable, would have been unimaginable to them as kids,
Mm,
and to have conversations with men that are really that are tired of the distractions of life that we can find ourselves in, that are tired of being distracted by what doesn't matter, tired of numbing themselves out. And the other part of this that's really been exciting is that this is not a program. I mean, one of the things I talk to the guys about is what this program is not.
mm,
And this program is really not for people that are just starting on their journey, that have just been smacked in the face, fell on the ground, realized that they needed to change a whole bunch of shit in their life. This is for guys who have had those moments and have been working and are now at a level where they've got some mastery and they just are really looking for the next level of opportunity. And so to be having conversations with men that are in that space and to know that we're going to have a solid group of men in that space is just invigorating.
Yeah. And I want to, it's an interesting thing because, you and I, we're going to be spending an entire year with these guys. And I want to spend time with men that I'm inspired by and
Yeah.
that I want to spend fucking time with. I don't want to spend time with every guy out there. There are a lot of men that I don't want to have anything to do with. I can respect them, I can love them in that spiritual way, but I don't want to hang out with them. And at the same time, in every men's group that I've ever been in, there's always one or two guys that are fucking going through it. Just life is handing their ass right back to them in that
Yeah.
moment. Like they are hurting. They're going through something. They're going through a huge breakdown. So, um, I just want to speak to, if you're a man listening and you're at a point where you are going through it, um, don't let that stop you from
Yeah.
applying all the same.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, look, you know, beginning of December, I was in a place of grief that I can't remember
Mhm.
because of Jeff's death. And thank God I had you and other guys surround me at that moment because I had never been through that before.
Yeah.
Right. And most of us guys are going through things that we've never been through before,
Yeah.
whether or not it's in a relationship or a career or money, or we're going through and if we've never gone through what we're going through before, might as well surround ourselves with guys who are probably, some of them have been through what we've been through and have something to offer us and to be available to us and to step in and to speak life where there is none, to bring light where there's darkness. Like that's the real opportunity for guys. And my hope is that we all do go through something this year. Like if we're not going through something that puts us on the edge. I've never done a podcast before. This is the last thing in the world that I wanted to do today is do this. But I know that in order for me to step into what I really want for my life, to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others, to leave people in places better than when I found them, I better get on the call. And
Yeah.
other guys are needing to answer a different call in their life, and they've been
Yeah.
hearing it and hearing it and hearing it, sometimes in some subtle ways and sometimes in some very overt painful ways. But if you're in that space where you're ready for more, this is a spot, this is an opportunity to
Yeah.
really step into it.
And I say, if you're not going through something you've never gone through before, then you are, and I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to
Yeah,
anybody
I
else,
hear that.
then you're hanging out in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that is, like you said earlier, Tate, we men, we need mountains to climb or we just fucking get bored. I
Yeah.
mean, I noticed this when I'm driving on the highway. Like my lady, she's always wanting me to slow down. I'm like, woman, I own this highway. I am the best driver on this motherfucker. I own this highway. She's wanting me to play it safe. And I know that if I it's a dance we do because I don't want her to feel unsafe, but I also know that I have to be on a kind of edge
Yeah.
or, you know, I'm going to put it in kind of grotesque terms, or I don't grotesque, but gross terms. My dick feels limp. My body feels limp. My life feels limp.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm no good to my partner. I'm no good to anybody if I'm feeling limp in my life.
That's right.
Even if I got money, success, even if my woman's sitting right next to me, if I'm feeling limp in my life, I'm of no good to her or anybody.
No question. Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
putting myself out of my comfort zone, not on the highway. Let's be clear. So especially not with my lady in the car. You got to still slow down a little bit. Find the balance. Um, but I've got to, even you and me doing this. I mean, we've never done this before, certainly not together. And this is the first time I've done a year-long program with men. I'm exhilarated, and I've shared with you, man, shit's going to come up.
Yeah.
There's going to be conflict arise in this space. men are going to go through all kinds of things that we can't even anticipate. You and I might go through all kinds of things that we can't anticipate. Like, wow, man, it's like we're all getting in a boat and
Yeah.
just going to go circumnavigate the globe for the next year
Yeah. Yeah.
together.
Oh,
Whoa. But what,
oh,
how exciting is that at the same
yeah.
time?
Yeah. Definitely.
So very good. So again, if you're listening, bryanreeves.com/elevate. That is the website. We have a few spots left. Bryan with a Y, reeves.com/elevate. Tate, let's finish up with the 5 key takeaways, man. You've been, you've helped me out with this podcast, in terms of formulating ideas and everything. And
Yeah.
uh, here's your turn, man. You get to do the 5 key takeaways. That's kind of, I don't know. Is that exciting to you? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure I have good answers, but I'm ready for
Let's
it.
see. Let's see what happens. All right. So, key takeaway number 1. And by the way, man, before we dive into that, I just want to acknowledge, dude, you're like a seasoned professional. You've crushed it in this conversation, man, because you're just being you, man. That's
I'm
what I
just
love.
talking to my boy. I'm just
Just,
talking to my
just
boy. Come
talking your
on.
exactly. I mean, this just feels like home, man. We're all
Yeah.
good.
No doubt. No doubt.
We're just inviting, thousands of other people to listen in at their leisure. That's all. That's the only difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, but you've done amazing, man. Truly, I'm thrilled. Thank you for saying yes. And
Yeah, thanks for
there's
having me, man. Thanks
so
for
much,
having me. And
so
thanks for
much.
inviting me on this journey with you. I know that this is really
Mhm.
born out of the last journey that we went on just 3 months ago,
That's right.
really.
That's right. Yeah,
And to
that's right.
be invited to do this work with you again is like a dream come true for me. We had another incident where I got invited to do some work with you that had a different kind of intention to it. And this feels just beautiful, brother.
What was that? I don't remember. What are you talking about? What was the other thing?
Working with your parents.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. All right.
We've been through a
Another
lot.
another story for another time. That shit was hilarious. Yeah,
Exactly.
there was a time when Tate we flew Tate in
Yeah.
to 15 years ago. I was like, well, 10 years ago, 15 years
Yeah.
ago, something like that.
Yeah. Thank God you did, because it's because of that bad experience that I got to meet my wife, which is,
Well, and let's bring this full circle. It's also how you and I got our first, and in my case
colonic,
only, colonics together. It was a
only for
professional
me as well.
courtesy. It was good. It was a professional courtesy. We were
That's
selling
right.
equipment. My parents' equipment that was, our clients were massage therapists and
We're getting
lymphatherapists.
into deep
So,
territory right now.
so to speak, deep
Yeah.
anal
Yeah.
territory right now.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Great. Oh,
Five
I hope
key.
I hope we edit that out of there.
I don't think we will. Nope, that
Yeah, I
stays.
figured not.
That stays.
All right, cool.
All right, man. 5 key takeaways. What's the one key insight? This is the first key takeaway. See, I'm a little flustered. Maybe we'll have to edit a little bit of that out. Anyway, what's key insight? All right, Bryan, compose yourself. Okay, here we go. Professional. We back. Key insight number 1, Tate. What is the one? Damn, I'm fumbling this. Okay, here we go. 5 key takeaways. Key takeaway number 1. Key insight. What is the one key insight that you would offer our listeners that you believe can make a meaningful impact on their lives because it has in yours?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, which is it's in the dark that we find the light. So, whatever it is that people are going through, the worst of the experiences of your life, my guess is that was the fertile ground for something beautiful to come out. So if you're going through something difficult, bring it out into the light, help people, have people help you deal with the darkness and see what happens in your life, because it will help your life become unrecognizable.
Beautiful, man. Another way I've heard that language is the in your mess is your greatest message.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Number two, key mentor. Name another man you've been inspired by, living or dead, that you would recommend our listeners to learn more about.
Man, when I think about this question, the first thing that came to mind is the author Richard Bach, who
Yeah.
you introduced me to,
Yeah.
who has got some brilliant books out there. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Illusions, and my favorite, Running from Safety.
Mm.
It is his work is something definitely to check out, and in particular that book, I think, for men.
Running from Safety. Yeah, man. I love how you've kept that alive for me. I haven't really revisited his work for years, but he was one of my early, most influential teachers, authors,
Yeah,
mentors. I mean, I never met the
yep,
man, but yet he was very much a mentor to me.
yeah.
Beautiful, man. Number three, key resource. Your most impactful, inspiring book, movie, or podcast of the last year.
I want to actually the movie that always comes to me is a movie called My Life.
Mm.
And it's a story of Michael Keaton and Nicole Kidman. And Michael Keaton finds out that he's dying of cancer, but he also finds out that he's having a son. And he starts videotaping his life to send a message to his unborn son. And it's a beautiful story about father and son and grandson
Mm.
that is,
Mm.
really just touches me. And every time I see it, I still cry almost every single time I watch it, and definitely a must.
Beautiful. Thanks, man. Number four, key investment in the last year. What's the best thing you spent money on? And normally I say under 10,000, but let's go pandemic year spending and call it under 1,000.
Under 1,000. Um, well, maybe it was little bit more than that, which was in 2020. My wife, as the president, and me as one of her employees, launched our coaching business, Paradigm. We spent money to brand it and to get it out there, and to really start providing support to help people kind of reset their life. And for my wife, who works in Ayurvedic wellness and health and wellness and healing, and we took 2020 to be on purpose about launching that business, and it took money to do that, and it wouldn't have happened if you 3 years ago hadn't started challenging me to start having some coaching conversations with people.
Yeah.
But that was an investment that has been a long time coming and has made a big impact for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the branding work, the image work, everything, looks beautiful. Came out beautiful, man. I think that, it's one thing that I'm aware of. One thing I love about our partnership is we're going to bring very different gifts to it. My style is let's just fucking launch. Let's go. Let's build it on the fly. And that has value. Let's take action. Let it be messy and let it be.
Yeah.
And you've already brought that perspective of, okay, well, let's let's tighten some things up even before we keep going, like branding and images and all that stuff. And these are all really healthy tensions in a partnership. It's great that we kind of see different things and bring different, that's essential. Otherwise, what are we being partners for?
Yeah. Right.
And I'm just so aware that I'm so excited. We're off and running with Elevate 2021. And it's funny as I'm sitting here right now, I've made pens for the guys, and I've made a journal for the guys, and I'm looking at them and going, they do not match. Like, these do not match. Like, they're beautiful in their own right, but they don't go together.
No,
And so I'm
right.
just kind of laughing, like, this is me, just let's take action, man. Let's get the shit out there, start making it happen. And I'm just sitting there thinking, we're going to send these to the guys in, the next few weeks. And I'm like, it's going to be a little silly when they open these up and they don't match. So, but it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah. It'll be all right.
It'd be all right. Evolution is messy.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But, I'm excited to do the branding, and I think you're going to lead that for us.
Let's do it.
All right. Final key takeaway, key practice. Please offer
Mm.
one consistent practice, spiritual, creative, personal, or relational, that has served you well and that you challenge our listeners to take on for the next 7 days.
That's a great question. So my answer is in relation to a study that was done in 2005 by the National Science Foundation that produced this article that talked about how we have somewhere in between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And out of the thoughts that we have, 80% of them are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. So we're having the same negative thoughts day in and day out. And so one of the things that I've used to combat that negative voice that lives inside of me is actually to create playlists. I've got playlists on courage. I've got playlists on hope. I've got playlists on
Music playlists.
forgiveness, music playlists, right? And so what I do every single year is actually create an anthem, like a list of songs that are going to speak life into me. And my challenge to the guys out there is find one song, just one song that speaks life into you, and play it once a day for 7 days and see what starts to happen. Because that negative thought process, that negative thinking, we need to find a way to feed our mind to start having some different thoughts.
I love it. That's beautiful. A beautiful idea, man. Bringing music. What really touches me about that as well is I just reflect on Elevate 2021, and when we gather together in August, when we all come together in person, and I see it now, us, the fire outside of our retreat home, all of us gathered around the fire blasting our anthem song.
I love it.
Fucking just, oh man, I can't wait for that moment. That's going to be a beautiful moment.
Good stuff, brother.
Okay, man. Well,
Let's do it.
How you feeling?
I feel it. I'm ready. I've got a call at 4:30 today. So 15 minutes from now, we might be talking to guy number 8. And I can't wait, man. Pumped.
Tate, I love you. I'm so grateful for our lifelong friendship, and we're still young pups, man. We got a long ways to go. God willing. God willing.
Amen. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Best.